Hello, everyone. We have some folks coming in. We're just going to give it another minute before we get started. But of course, I want to be respectful to everybody who showed up on time, so we won't be waiting too long. All right, closing and getting started. Okay, everyone, thank you so much for joining again. I am Melissa Cleater, Program Manager with the National Fund, and I am thrilled to have folks here again for our third session of this amazing series. Frontline focused, building a thriving and equitable workplace. And I always like to give a special recognition to our generous partners who supported this series. That is the West Miriam Asefa Foundation, MetLife Foundation, and Futures Without Violence. I'm also going to give a shout out to folks who have joined our previous sessions. This is our third. And so I'm going to skip over some organizational background today to get to the good stuff. We have a lot of really exciting content to cover with our presenters today. But if you want to learn more about CareerStat and the National Fund, you can check out the previous session recordings or reach out to me directly. I am always happy to chat CareerStat and field some follow-up questions that you might have. And if you haven't already, we have established a little roll call tradition on these calls. So would love for folks to go ahead and put their name, organization, and location in the chat. And that helps us just build a little bit of community of knowing who's in the Zoom room. And this is a high-level preview of what we're going to cover today. I will give a brief intro of the topic, and then our fantastic presenters will introduce themselves and share a high-level overview of their organizations. And then we'll take a dive into an interview to learn more about how the Boston area healthcare ecosystem collaborates to improve jobs and equity in the sector. And then roughly around 2 p.m., we'll go into breakout sessions for folks who want to go even deeper into that dive. And I will be your Sally Jesse Raphael for that interview, right? I will be leading and moderating that interview, but I really encourage you all to pop questions into the chat or raise your hand to contribute. As always, these webinars and CareerStat overall is a team effort, and the audience is in the game, not on the bench, right? So if you have a best practice or lessons learned around partnerships, don't be shy about sharing that here or in the breakout sessions or in Mobilize, which is our online community of practice for CareerStat employers. And so this is just going to give us a little overarching context between the previous webinars and this one. Previously, we have looked at labor market data that shows we need as employers to get creative and make some practice changes to engage in a wider talent pool to fill our high demand positions. We also talked about how social determinants of work are more likely to create barriers for historically untapped talent. And while it's critical for employers to understand and to work to mitigate or support or remove these barriers for workers, they cannot, nor should they, do that all on their own, right? Partnering with a third party is one strategy to really connect workers to training, to jobs, to social supports, and so much more. But the reality is that's easier said than done, right? Maintaining any relationship, partnerships take work, time, and resources to really build the trust and the understanding and commitment to really work and collaborate together. And so today we're going to hear some practices and programs that make the Boston area collaboration such a success, and in hopes that sparks some ideas or strategies for you all in how to engage partners in your own communities. So now I'm going to kick it over to our friend Lorette with her fancy slide transitions. Get ready to tell us a little bit more about Boston Children's Hospital. And then as the slides come, our other presenters, just feel free to jump in when it comes to your slide and keep it going. So Lorette.
Thank you, Melissa. I saw that I was first. I needed something for my nerves, right? Just to keep it so I kept it a little fancy, like you said. Thank you so much for having me here today. My name is Florette Louise, Workforce Development Team Lead here. Team Lead Community Strategies here at Boston Children's Hospital. And next slide, please. So here at Boston Children's, we are really proud that we have been named the #1 children's hospital in the nation by US News and World Report for 9 years in a row. We have our main campus, which is in the Boston Longwood Medical area, and 8 satellite campuses in Massachusetts. We also have physician offices in Massachusetts, New York, and Connecticut. We have over 12,000 employees and an additional 20,000 plus contractors and physicians, et cetera. We're the #1 NIH funded in pediatric research. And that's the fanciness that Melissa's talking about, calming the nerves here. So workforce development at Boston Children's, our department is housed right within human resources. Our department is now called Workforce Development and Internal Mobility Programs. Our internal mobility team has transitioned from talent acquisition and is now under the workforce development umbrella. And although we're housed in human resources, we collaborate with internal stakeholders, including our Office of Community Health.
Oh no, I did something wrong here.
Oh,
do you all
no
see
worries.
that? Do you see this weird green stuff, or is
No
it just showing
worries
up?
at all. No worries. So in here just showcases how large the team is. We are small but mighty. It has grown over the last couple of years. It was a team of 1 from 2015 up until 2016, and then team of 2 and so on. But our team is 6 full-time FTEs that are funded by the hospital, and the additional staff are funded by state funds through community partnerships that we have, which we probably will talk a little bit about today, and philanthropy dollars as well. And the work that we do is, and I'm not going to go talk about too much because I'm sure everybody's doing almost the same work here on this call, but our areas of focus is in recent years on the community side is we have 2 large training programs that we are doing that are state funded, and then we have additional community partnership programs that we'll touch on a little bit later on as well through partnerships with our community partners such as JVS and African Bridge Network and so forth. And then we do also have that outside in, inside up approach where we're working with our current employees here at Boston Children to help them with their career development and growth. And through our partnerships and collaboration with other hospitals and partners, we have an opportunity to purchase seats to help foster the growth of our employees.
Thanks, Florette. Hi, everyone. My name is Davy. I work for JVS Boston. It's actually really nice. I see a ton of names on this call, actually, of colleagues. I see Lori and Kathleen and Eves I just met recently. So this is nice, the call of colleagues. So I put our mission up here because I think it really covers exactly what we do. So for those of you who don't know, I'll give you an introduction of who JVS Boston is, but I really love revisiting our mission statement every once in a while with my team. So I thought I'd share it with y'all. This is what we do. We're empowering individuals from diverse communities to find employment and build careers while partnering with employers to hire, develop, and retain productive workforces. And there's a reason there's 2 parts to our mission. One is heavily focused on our mission, which is our clients, and our customers, which is our employers. And that I think is really a good indication of how we focus here really heavily on both of those pieces in our work. So we can go to the next slide. I am currently serving as a Senior Director of Business Development at JBS. I've been here, next month will be 8 years, which is bananas. How did that happen, Florette? So I've been here for quite a while at JBS, and I started out as a career coach in our Refugee Services Department, and I've been able to work across a couple of different teams on different initiatives. I'm currently responsible for our fee-for-service work, for working very closely with our employer partners to build different talent pipeline, training programs, English classes, a number of different things. So basically, I'm a pretty good listener. That's what I do at JBS. So we can go to the next slide. I want to just tell you a little bit about who we are in case you don't know who the heck JBS is. So we're right in downtown Boston. Of course, we're a nonprofit. We've been around for a really long time, and our story really started by assisting Jewish refugees who fled from Eastern Europe and found themselves in a new country, a different language, and didn't know how to translate their skills. So JBS was created to help them find a new home and be able to rebuild their lives here. And we continue that work today with people from all over the world. And I think we really understand the value of the community, and that's really at the heart of what we do. And we know we need to rely on our clients, our community partners, our employer partners, our grant partners, all of the above. So that's a big piece of what we do. And then all of you probably know that Massachusetts has various mass hire career centers, and we're lucky enough that one of them is housed within our organization. It's the Mass Hire Downtown Boston Career Center, which is not the same as the Mass Hire Boston Career Center. That's a different location. So we're all focused on helping people get jobs. That's what we do. We mostly do it in the greater Boston area, but we continue to expand our reach as well, especially because COVID taught us how to do things hybrid and how to do things virtual. So that's a little bit about who JBS is. And the next slide is just an overview of some of the things that we've been doing. So on the panel here, you're meeting colleagues from BCH and from MDB. And so I thought I'd just mention that we have partnered with these two folks for decades. And I'm not kidding when I say I really lean heavily on them. I can't tell you the number of times Florette and I have had a call at 6:30 on our cell phones talking about, what do you think about this? So we really lean on each other to develop and create and implement programs. We serve well over 2,000 clients a year into job placements. We run over 35 training programs. We have over 500 employer partners. And at the bottom here, I sort of outlined some of the talent pipeline programs that we run at JBS. I am personally involved with each of these, so I'm happy to explain more about what they are, what they look like, and who we're partnered with on each of them. And then the last piece is we have this thing here called Partnering for Impact. It's we created this joke internally called #PFI, and it's basically how we are good listeners. We're trying to quantify and respond strategically to our partners' needs, because that means we can better serve the clients that we're working with. It allows us to just work more intentionally. So that's who we are. That's who I am. But I'm going to pass it off to my colleagues now. I'm happy to be here with you guys. Oh, I'm kidding. There's one more slide. Sorry. Just kidding. This is real quick, an overview of how we do what we do. So there's three full parts of this. One is to recruit candidates, find the right candidates to match the hiring needs that you have. Then we run contextualized, customized programs that meet those needs, and all of it from all the way through recruitment to job placement and beyond. When they're retaining, we're providing them job readiness coaching. And that's really what we like to call our secret sauce of how we're able to support our job seekers as they're entering new fields or new careers, and also support our employer partners who might not know how to navigate some of the funky things like childcare that clients are trying to navigate through, or working through the shelter system. And we're here to provide those supports to them. So that is how we do what we do with the talent pipeline programs. And I'm happy to tell you more about it throughout today. Thanks, Melissa.
Hello, everybody. So I will take it from here for now. So I'm Stephanie Lashoto Westfield. I'm a workforce development specialist with Mass General Brigham. Mass General Brigham is a very wide network of hospitals in the greater Boston and southern New Hampshire area. So I thought I would have this slide just so you could know a little bit about who we are. We used to be called Partners Healthcare. So there's a network of 16 hospitals, and in addition to that, some community health and urgent care centers in this area, over 74,000 employees in the entirety of the system. The name comes from our two founding members, Massachusetts General Hospital, Brigham and Women's Hospital. We mushed those together and came up with Mass General Brigham. And over half of the employees in this entire system work here in Boston at Mass General or Brigham and Women's Hospital. So that's who we are and where we are, what we do, what I do. I work in the workforce development team, which is part of human resources. Our team has 15 employees supporting the organization, big organization, pretty robust workforce development team. Like Florette mentioned, we have that outside in, inside up approach. So we have part of our team, similar to Boston Children's Hospital. Part of our team works on community partnerships and pipelines, some youth programs and summer job programs to get access to employment to members of our community. And then our goal is once they're in, we move them up. So I work primarily with our incumbent employees. So we've got some pipeline programs, some of the ones that Davy had referenced on her previous slide, such as patient care technician, and we work with central sterile processing. We also have some incumbent pipelines for non-clinical roles like practice assistant, patient service coordinator, those entry-level front desk roles. We partner with Boston Children's Hospital to offer some foundational skill building classes like ESOL classes for speakers of other languages, computers and writing classes. And we also are working on some higher education access preparation. So we partner with JVS for some pre-college classes. We do some academic and career coaching internally as well. And so workforce development is part of HR. Because we are a giant organization, we've got different levels of HR supporting different levels of employees. So workforce development works with employees in our low barrier to entry roles and kind of first level skill roles. So think about phlebotomists, think about medical assistants. Those are our focus in the workforce development worlds. We've got partners in what's called people and organizational development who work with managers and executives and employees that are at that level. So we have a kind of a divide and conquer approach when we think about how we develop our giant workforce. And then of course, the different clinical departments have their own clinical training and upskilling that they do for their doctors, nurses, skilled clinicians. So in workforce development, our goal is to, meet employer demand. We are here to serve the hospital. So to train employees for roles, not only that are going to better them, better their salary, inspire them or help them grow in new ways, but also to fill vacancies because we're all in healthcare and we know there's a lot of vacancies. So what are those vacancies? How can we promote from within and get people ready to fill those vacancies? And how can we offer opportunities for economic success and growth to our communities? So trying to get people in and meet our needs. That's all right. I just had those two, thought I'd keep it simple. And I'll pass it over to Emmanuel.
Thank you, Stephanie, and thank you, Melissa, for including ABN in the conversation this afternoon. And thank you, everyone, for spending some time with us. My name is Emmanuel Owusu. Originally from Ghana in West Africa, and that means I'm a skilled immigrant myself. I came into US with college degree, and I experienced the initial downgrade and built my career from there. So what I end up doing is founding an organization that works with skilled immigrants with the name African Bridge Network. So our mission is to build a supportive community that values and strengthens the qualifications of skilled immigrants and helping them reach their full potential. What we're doing, the focus is on the supportive community because we realize without the community, it's difficult for individuals of college degree to be able to build their career back in the US. We started in 2015, focusing on the Africans, but I'm happy to report that right now, more than half of our clients are not even Africans. And in a year, we serve close to 200 skilled immigrants able to help them in job. Most of our work is located in the Boston area. We are expanding to the Worcester and the North Shore as well as we talk. Next slide, please. Our programs are built around the different stages of the skilled immigrants as they come into US, their first 5 years. Most of the time they are looking for information. How do they build their career? So we have what we call orientation workshop for foreign trained professionals. And then what we do next is we pair individuals with career counselors. And these counselors are actually members of the community that we will recruit and train. Remember what I said, we're building a supportive community. So everything we do is a community approach. We have mentors, recruit from the communities as well. and train them to provide mentoring for new immigrants. Then we have our fellowship program aiming to provide skilled immigrants with the opportunity to get the US working experience. It's one of the biggest challenges that individuals with foreign degrees face. They lack the US working experience. So we create that opportunity, and you can't do this work without partnership with employers. That brings us to this conversation. The fellowship is quite successful, 95% placement into job when they are done with their fellowship, and with our individual career advice and services, we're talking about 68% able to find job if they are looking for one. I serve as the executive director. That means I do everything in the organization as needed to keep the boat floating. Thank you for listening.
Fantastic. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. Don't feel the need to come off or come onto video if you're not, that's okay. But this is going to just be a little bit more conversational at this point. And I would like to start with the question of, the context of knowing that partnerships are vital to getting the work done, but can be complex to establish and navigate. And because of the work that is required to maintain partnerships, it's important to be really strategic about who you work with and why. And so starting with Davy, I'd love to hear more about your strategies and how you use the strategies you use to find and vet some of the partners that you work with.
Sure. Thanks, Melissa. One of the examples that I shared with Melissa and this team is a tool that we actually built here at JVS. It's called the JQBI, the Job Quality Benchmarking Index, and it is a series of questions in a survey format that employers can complete. We compare your results to other like-sized and similar area industry employers and provide you actually with what we call a benchmark report to help you understand how you stack up against others. And that tool has actually been really helpful for us to understand who are the employers providing great job quality, who's making changes to their benefits packages or to their wages over time and are really invested in the employees that they're serving. And that is helping us understand, hey, they've got something great to offer. I want my clients to have the job that's paying a competitive wage, or that is, mindful of parent hours, or is offering flexibility with scheduling because they know parents have kids with whole lives that they have to be flexible with. And so there's a number of different things that we use the benchmarking index for, and that's one of the ways that we help determine who good partners are. And then we've been lucky enough that we've been around for a long time, that we've had a lot of great partners that we've been able to work with. But one of the things that I had shared with them is now we have the ability to say no to things, which is not something we've ever done before. But if we're working with an employer and they're paying below the average wage for a role, and there are other employers who are interested in this work and are willing to pay higher to have the talent, then those are the employers that we want to be working with. We want to work with the employers who are able to be flexible when it comes to shifts and scheduling, because it means that we're able to pull more people into the job market and serve them and, uplift their families. And so those are some of the small ways that we've been able to vet the right partners and think about who's a fit for us and for the clients that we serve.
Thank you. Florette, what about y'all?
All right, coming off mute here. So I think for us, we're constantly reevaluating what are the needs here at the hospital, working with our internal stakeholders here at Boston Children's, our talent acquisition team, to identify what are the high demand jobs and how do we help pipeline opportunities for them. And so what we do is sometimes we're working with individual community-based organizations that can meet or fill those needs, and structuring the partnership in that way. And so we build our relationship through something called service level agreements that we started a couple of years ago, which has really helped to foster that relationship with our community partners. And all it is, although it's has the word agreement, it's really goal setting with our partners, having regular meetings, regular cadence meetings with them, and ensuring that they're also building relationships with our internal stakeholders so that we continue to provide opportunities for them. We ensure that the goals are aligned, the mission, the values, and really support the overall need here at the hospital. We have over 20 community-based organizations that we're working with. And since we've implemented the service level agreements, we have about 10 partners that have signed on. And then we just launched the youth and young adult service level agreement as well to really build those partnerships.
Great, thank you. And then Emmanuel, from a partner organization perspective, what are some of the things that you look for or you feel are important when engaging employer partners?
So for us, our approach with skilled immigrants is first of all to value what they bring to the US with them. And that means they already have college degrees, so they don't have to start from scratch. And that is how we show up, and that's how we support them. So we are constantly looking for opportunity that will allow this individual not to start from scratch, but to be able to build career into a profession that have development at the end of it, at the end of the day. So what we're doing here is we are always looking for pathways and opportunity to allow these individuals to move from point A to point B. When we identify an employer partner who provide those opportunities, then we're beginning to have the conversation, how do we build the pathways? It could be upskilling those individuals or providing them with the right support for us to be able to position them with the employers. And that is what we do as a model. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And then our next question, in my experience, Boston has a pretty unique collaboration system, right? Like folks seem really willing to engage. It seems very integrated, and you're looking at both individual organizational needs, but also what's going on in the region, right? And that can also include things from other sectors and how that's influencing healthcare. It looks at all of the different factors that come into a community that can impact workforce development. And so I am curious just to hear a little bit about how your partnerships, both in your long-term healthcare industry partnership and other kind of sub-partnerships, right? Like, in fact, you're doing so many partnerships, it's really hard to keep track of like who is partnering with who, which I think is a real good sign for that collaboration. But I'd love to hear several examples of how quote unquote competitors came together to address some of these regional challenges. And so you share some of how that the region works together and how you're able to shift from that competition that is seen particularly in healthcare in many communities throughout the country into a more co-opetition or cooperation model. And so I'm going to start there with Stephanie, if I may.
Absolutely. Pardon me. So one of the collaborations that Mass General Brigham has been a part of is called the Healthcare HTA, Healthcare Training Institute, that JVS organizes. So as Melissa mentioned, some of our competitor hospitals are within blocks from each other in the same city. So Brigham and Women's Hospital, which is part of Mass General Brigham, is across the street from Boston Children's Hospital, which is next to Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center. So they're all together, and we all hire similar staff with similar backgrounds for similar positions. And all of those institutions had a similar need for English language training for some of their entry-level workers. And so each hospital has an individual budget, but we realized that a consortium could be formed so that we could meet the needs of all the employers. So each of those employers, through classes run by JVS, purchases a set number of slots. So instead of offering in English classes for 30 employees and having a little tiny program, we can offer a program for over 100 employees by each hospital purchasing the number of slots that's right for them. And because there's a greater mass of employees that are taking advantage of these English classes, there can be more levels, there can be more schedules, and there can be a little bit more flexibility. I think, a concern might be, oh my gosh, what if employees at Children's Hospital are in class with Beth Israel employees, and are they going to think Beth Israel's better and leave, or this, that, and the other thing? I haven't seen any evidence of that happening. Employees will sometimes learn about other jobs by being in class with other employees and say, oh my gosh, I didn't really know what materials management was. That sounds interesting for me. Or sterile processing, tell me more about that. But employees largely are there because they all have the same goal. They all want to learn English, and the employers all have the same goal. They want to support their workforce and help, establish better communication within their workforce. So that partnership has been great. So it started back in 2007. It's going strong. And the beauty of that, COVID taught us all how to do things online. And so with an entity like Mass General Brigham, which has folks all over the region, classes are now offered on Zoom. So geography is not a barrier. Some of these larger hospital networks can purchase more slots and let even more employees participate in this collaborative learning environment.
Steph, I can jump in and share from JVS. It's nice to hear you guys shouting out the HCI program. And I don't know if you guys know, but Stephanie actually used to work at JVS. So she have this from experience of helping on that program. But it was specifically designed for a couple different reasons. It was designed because we knew that there was a need to support incumbent workers at these employer locations. And the employer wanted to demonstrate to its staff, to its community, that they were going to not just like talk a bunch of talk, but actually walk the walk. And so they have a dedicated space in Longwood Medical area where our staff actually go there and work there. We have a manager, we have instructors that are there that are running those programs and teaching those classes. And that allowed their staff to be able to access opportunities for English classes, to be able to move up in their careers. We've had staff, employees that are working there from different hospitals within HCI who now can communicate to their employers. There's somebody who's connected and said, I didn't know that you had a kid who was high school age. I also have a kid who's high school age, and I've never talked to you about this. So it's nice to be able to have those conversations, but it's also nice because of safety, being able to read the chemicals that you might be working with if you're in an EVS role. So there's a lot of thoughtfulness that's been put into it that also allowed us to grow in other ways. So because we had that dedicated space that was there, that is there in the Longwood Medical area, one of the other things that we're thinking about when we're trying to collaborate is how do we actually physically do this? And so we knew that our colleagues over at Boston Children's Hospital had a real need to fill roles for animal care technicians. It is not the sexiest job out there, but it is such an important job. And so we said, hey, I think we can do this. Like, I think we can partner and make this happen. And even better, we have some space that's out there that we could probably run a class close by to you. Because even though we're in downtown Boston, the Longwood Medical area is not that easy to get to on foot. And so the space that we have in the Longwood Medical area with our teachers is across the street from the research facility, literally half a block away. And so we were able to build a program to find the right talent for these roles, provide them on the job training at BCH, and then provide them with some English and job readiness courses right across the street. And so it's one of the small ways that we've been able to collaborate really thoughtfully with our partners by helping to fill a really important hiring need, serving the community, and thinking about different ways that we can do that in-house so they're not having to travel too far. So that's been a huge success, and Flora is a huge, huge piece of that. There's so much transparency that happens in that partnership that we'll talk more about. But some of the work we've also been doing is with training incumbent employees. That's what I do a lot of work with Stephanie. So we run a 7-week patient care technician training program for Mass General Hospital. And that is specifically for their incumbent employees. So we are helping to identify, screen, and assess internal MGH employees who want to move up. And so they're able to retain their talent. Instead of going to another employer who might offer them something better, you can keep them in-house, capitalize on the fact that they really love working for MGH and they just want to move up in their careers, and provide them the skills necessary to do that. And so MGH has been incredible in providing them the connections to make that happening. They're paying them for the hours that they're in training, and then there is a full-time benefited job waiting for them at the end of that training within MGH. So they're retaining their talent, and it's really incredible to see when we enroll candidates in that program. Some people have been at MGH for 17 years. We had someone recently who said something 20 plus years. I couldn't remember exactly how many, but that's impressive enough. And there are some folks who've just been there a couple of years. So it really is wide how we're able to reach folks by working together and figuring out like what is something we can do to partner together to find external talent and bring them in, or move up your internal talent. So I just want to share that that's some of the ways that we've been working together as well. And I wonder, Flora, if you want to speak to some of the work that you're doing as well.
Sure. So I'm happy you mentioned Arch. That is definitely a wonderful way for me to spend my Monday morning with you all and continuing to grow that work. An additional way that we've partnered or collaborated with within here in the Boston area is through the Health Care Careers Consortium. And that is something that's convened quarterly, and it's run by the Boston Private Industry Council and is co-chaired by the Workforce Development Director, so Mass General Brigham and Boston Children's Hospital. And it was established in 2010. The consortium has grown to over 50 partners that are part of that initiative. And I will say, the way that I was introduced to Emmanuel, African Bridge Network in 2019 was because I saw his name as one of the partners. And so I reached out to Emmanuel directly and wanted to know more about what it is that he's doing, and started presenting with that group. So it's definitely a wonderful way to continue to network and meet other community partners in the Boston area and work with them. But it also doesn't only convene with employers, but it's educators, the workforce system, and partners in general. And just recently, like I said in the previous, when I was doing the slides earlier, I talked a little bit about how we have grown to have 4 additional FTEs over the last few years within workforce development because of state-funded dollars. So Boston Children's was awarded 2 grants through the Senator Kenneth, I should say, J. Donnelly Workforce Success Grant. And one of them is to target behavioral health workforce, behavioral entry-level work in behavioral health. And we partner with Beth Israel Lahey Health, the Mount Auburn Mount Auburn Hospital, as well as Boston Medical Center in their new behavioral health center in Brockton, Massachusetts. And then we also are now partnering with Dana-Farber Cancer Institute, as well as South Shore Health, in a new initiative to help bridge the barriers for those that are looking for frontline office work. So patient experience representative and patient access representative type of positions. These roles and opportunities to get this grant would not be possible without collaboration and partnership amongst all of these hospitals. And the opportunities that we're providing to these candidates would not be possible as well. So I'm really excited, happy to be a part of the Boston area and the network that we have here. I've been working in human resources for over 20 years, but in other ways, right, recruitment and so on, and benefits. So to now work in workforce development and know that we're not competing with one another, we're supporting one another in the work that we do. We're all mission driven. It's really rewarding.
Love it. There's a number of things I'd love to uplift from there. Some things that I heard about what makes this ecosystem successful is a willingness to co-invest, both in terms of time and space, right? Being able to house things at hospital systems makes them much more accessible to workers and easier to be able to connect them to those trainings. I hear convening, bringing folks together across the ecosystem in somewhat of a regular basis, whether that is quarterly and through Zoom calls, whether it's in person, the ability to be able to come together and have some conversations around both the immediate needs and some of the wider systemic issues that the community faces and how you might be able to address those together is a huge opportunity just to be able to connect in that kind of way. And then collaboration. And that to me is like a willingness to have some honesty, transparency, and then some group kind of thinking about how we might be able to do this. So having some collective idea generation, and embedded in that is some continuous learning, a willingness to try something, see how it goes here, and then maybe the next time we innovate a little bit, change it a little bit so that it gets meets our needs a little bit more, or we recognize a change in what our needs are. So we're not going to do the same program for 15 years because a lot happens in 15 years. And so maybe the skill set that we need is different. Maybe all of that other stuff, it can really impact the success of a program. And so that willingness to be able to collaborate around candidly around what your needs are, both individually and as a community, I think is really powerful. And then thinking about partnerships, in my experience, one of the most challenging things come around shared expectations, right? Who's in charge of what? Who's collecting what data? Are you willing to share it? How is the work going to get done? It's so imperative to a successful partnership. But I think it can be really challenging, particularly if you have a newer partner, to be able to get on the same page around how you all are going to approach and work together. And so I am curious to hear, when it comes to the ability to understand each other's needs and understand the work that needs to be done and how, what strategies are you using to ensure that you're on the same page? And I think here we're starting with Florette. Back to you.
Okay. I think earlier we just mentioned how the JVS, we are literally meeting every week. Every week, every Monday, we're expecting to connect with each other. And but it's not just workforce development, it's the managers, it's the people that are on the floor working with the candidates directly, the trainees directly, to ensure that we're improving, we're growing together, and that this is not just for Boston Children's or just for JVS or it's everyone putting their foot forward and working together. So I think regular communication, my friend Davey mentioned our late night phone calls to connect on certain things. Sometimes I'm like, you know what? I think I'm just gonna try to give her a call right now. Let's figure this out. And I know Emmanuel's texted me before. I'm walking to pick up my daughter from the bus stop. So we literally have all built a relationship with one another that's helping us to support the candidates that we're working with. But I will also add I'm going to repeat what I said earlier about the service level agreement that we piloted. I think that has also helped us foster new relationships, help grow that, because we are coming into it with some set expectations and then revisiting these expectations and continuing to refine it and retune it. I also love what you said about piloting. Well, I don't think you used the word piloting, Melissa, but I'm going to use the word piloting because we love to pilot here. Let's go. Let's try it. Let's pilot this. Let's see. Let's just do it with 2 people. So as it relates to partnership, we start small. We start our relationship small, and we continue to meet and communicate with each other to grow.
Great, thank you. And then Stephanie, what's some insight on how you engage in that work?
Sure. So I also, as Davey mentioned, I came from JVS, so I have a very close personal relationship with a lot of my colleagues over at JVS Boston. But in addition to the weekly meetings that I have with JVS, one of the things that they do really well is to try to embed themselves in their clients' culture, right? So JVS works with all sorts of different hospitals, and we all have a slightly different culture, a slightly different way of doing things. And one of the ways they do that is through a group we call the Planning and Evaluation Team at MGH. So Mass General Hospital has been running ESOL and other entry-level workforce development courses with JVS for many years. And so when we first started them up, it was part of a grant that Mass General had. And one of the stipulations of the grant was that this planning and evaluation team be formed. And we now pay for these out of pocket. The grant is long gone, but we found these meetings to be so impactful that we've continued them for almost over 25 years of this partnership. And that team includes staff from JVS, it includes staff from workforce development, and it includes leadership from the departments of the departments that the employees who participate in our programs come from. So there's an operations manager from our patient care services, somebody from materials management, nutrition and food services training manager. So we meet monthly to talk about not only how the programs are going, how they're impacting their employees for better or for worse, if there's schedule issues that are a challenge, if there's staffing issues that are a challenge that are preventing employees from getting to work. And I think that's really helpful for JVS to also see what's going on the ground. Sometimes if you're teaching this lovely English class, you're kind of disconnected from the day-to-day in the hospital, but JVS wants to make sure they understand the full picture of what's going on, who's in the programs, and how they can support not only the employees that are participating, but the larger departments in the hospital as a whole. So those meetings are a really lovely collaboration.
Fantastic. And what I heard in that was both a willingness to know both the organization and the individuals, right? Like you're forming two levels of relationship there. And then also the recognition that like the type of program might dictate how frequently y'all are checking in, and not everything needs to be weekly. There might be some other things that might be 6 to 8 weeks, but having some form of regular check-in or opportunity to connect in, look at how and assess how the programs are going is vital to being able to keep that line of communication open and that continuous improvement. Similarly, I would love to hear Emmanuel's approach, right? I believe we may have tagged it a let's talk about it. Tell us a little bit more about how you employ that with your employer partners.
Thank you. So the work we do in a lot of ways new, really championing the cause of skilled immigrants is fairly new. Employers have a lot of questions around this population. So we take the position of it is our duty to support the employers to able to employ these candidates. So we are the first one to move. We are the real ones to go to the employer and make the case for this population. We are willing to say, okay, we will set up a meeting, bring our employer partners together. We will do the homework, make sure we set the table to bring employers in. But when we set the table, we have the approach of this is a co-ownership. It's not only us dictating, of course, we are much more smaller, but we create the atmosphere that allow our partners to also have a say in what we're doing. So there's a lot of collaboration when we work with our employer partners. And then you have to understand that you are building this process up. Sometimes it doesn't go the way you want, and you need to be transparent about it and be willing to have a conversation with your partners to be able to say, okay, you may have an issue, let's have a conversation about it, and just have a conversation with your employer partners to see what can you do better. And you own the process. Basically, you as an agency, you own the process to move your partners forward. That has been our approach. We own the process from beginning to the end, but we are very careful in creating space to receive feedback from our partners so that we can do things better. That is our approach.
Great, thank you. And so we have talked a little bit about programs in existence geared towards the recruiting, training, and retaining of workers. And I'd love to dive a little bit more into details of some of the current programs. Stephanie, can you tell us more about how MBG partners with the African Bridge Network and JVS and what you've learned along the way there? And I think specifically, maybe this one was really talking about, you know, kind of the, what's the word? Iterative learning that happened around the African Bridge Network program.
Sure. So we've been working with the African Bridge Network for a few years. And the first time that, you know, Emmanuel had conceived an idea for a project coordinator fellowship. So the idea was that his candidates would come and they would do a project coordinator fellowship somewhere at the hospital. And we're kind of a chicken and the egg. So my colleagues and I were going to different departments saying, would you like a project coordinator? And they said, well, who are the candidates we had? And we said, well, what's the job you'd like them to do? And so we were kind of going back and forth, trying to figure out who was leading whom. And so we were able to find host departments for this project coordinator internship, but it wasn't clearly defined. So we went back to the table. And Florette can talk about her experience because they did things differently at Children's Hospital, but at Mass General, we went in a bit of a circle. So for the second iteration of the fellowship, Emmanuel selected through conversation with the hospitals of what needs did we have and what roles would be best filled by foreign trained professionals, folks with some skills from and training from their own countries. And we decided on a research administrator fellowship. And so Emmanuel, the person, partnered with Emmanuel College, Higher Learning Institute here in Boston, to come up with an 8-week training for research administrators. So candidates with skills, you know, some of them were from medical fields, some of them were from the finance industry, different industries, went through this training, and we were placed with hosts to do this research administrator, grant administrator kind of a role. And that was much more successful because we were able to say, this is the role. This is the training that folks are going to come in with. Who wants to be be part of this. And we had 4 departments step up. 3 of the 4 retained their fellow after the fellowship was over. It wasn't a requirement that folks were hired on, but they had such a great experience that they kept them. The 4th would have kept her fellow had she had enough funding to keep her on, but she worked really hard with her fellow to get her resume and her interview skills up, and we were able to find another placement for her in another department. So by coming with having that conversation about what do we need as an employer, who does he have as candidates, how can we train them to make it a perfect match, really made the program much more successful. And we're able to over double that this year because of the success of that first cohort, because of having that targeted approach. So that worked really well for us. And maybe I'll leave it there. I can go back to more later if there's time.
Yeah. Fantastic. And if I understand correctly, your learning in that process also helped Florette's learning in that process. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but that is my understanding. And Florette, would you like to speak to that?
Yes, absolutely. And it definitely goes back to that open line of communication amongst everyone, right? Many meetings, separate meetings outside of the group one with Emmanuel and Emmanuel the person. So for us, we were actually more successful the first time around, and decided to approach it in the same manner the second time and did not have a huge success. So we were able to place 3 people the first time in the project coordinator opportunity. And then it was similar, Stephanie, of, okay, what do you have? All right, and just trying to find the right placements. But then we were able to find opportunities for these individuals, and 2 of them, one was extended before they decided to go off to medical school, and then the other person was offered a permanent position. The second cohort with the research administrator, we were so excited, especially as Stephanie mentioned, we know what the role was. We know what the job description entails. We know who the people are that we need to target. But with the needs around the hospital and being short-staffed, we just could not make a placement. It was, oh yeah, this is great. Let's meet with them. We can't dedicate the time to do the fellowship right now. So our new approach is similar to Stephanie's approach in the sense that we know when the fellowship is going to happen, right? We've worked with Emmanuel and we have an idea of when it's going to be, and I've already started outreach. We have 1 returning department because we had 1 department, our second cohort, and they're like, sign me up, right? So we have the 1 returning department already. And then I have 2 additional departments that are, waiting for additional information once we get up and running with Emmanuel for the 3rd cohort. So we're excited, and it sounds very promising that the communications that we had will hopefully help strengthen the opportunities for the candidates in the future.
That's fantastic. And these examples really focus on the recruitment side. But Emmanuel, I'm curious around what support you might have or advice, information, insight around the retaining staff part, right? And I think that this is a common challenge when we are looking to expand the talent, and then there's just various issues that become a challenge. Maybe they're cultural differences, maybe they're language barriers, maybe other things. But in your experience, what are some things that employers can do or partners might be able to do to help address it, the need to create an inclusive environment?
Thank you. So thank you, Stephanie and Florette, for sharing the experiences. So yes, it's not an easy ride because it's a new project. It's a new target group we are trying to support. So the question becomes, how do you sustain them once they are in? I think the very nature of we trying to support them to bring them in, we're learning to understand their needs. In the past, skilled immigrants were placed at much lower entry-level position, and they will not stay. They'll go in for a few years. So imagine you put a medical doctor trained outside the country in a very entry level like patient care role. Such a person goes in initially, she's like, yeah, I'll do it. I need the money. But quickly you realize he see people practicing medicine around him or her, and you go like, shoot, no, there's more I can do, and they will leave. But now our employer partners are getting attuned to the real need of this population. They are placing them in positions that is meaningful to them, and they are willing to stay. So the very nature of the program has a building element that people are willing to stay than they did previously. And obviously, we stick around these individuals, even when they are placed, they are still part of a WhatsApp group. They're able to communicate with each other. They are problem solving, even outside the workplace. So that is also going on well. The other thing is, as we increase the number of this population in the workplace, future cohort will see their colleague in there, and they will feel like this is a welcoming place where they can bring their talent. And if they have questions, there will be someone that they know will understand them better. They will gravitate towards that person. And that is how you retain this population. Thank you.
Thank you. And then, Davey, we had a few here, but I feel like you've shared some highlights with your partnerships. Is there anything else? I don't want to leave anything out. If there's just a little nugget that you wanted, an additional nugget to share.
Yeah, we've covered a lot, and I know we're getting close to time, but I thought I'd just quickly share, the thing that we're striving for to do here is to develop programs that are actually needed and helpful. And so animal care tech is one that came out of that. Patient care tech is one that came out of that. We've actually been partnering with Spalding Rehabilitation Network for over 8 years, I believe. We started a CNA training program with them, and now we've evolved our work into mostly patient care technician programs because they're more focused on acute care, which is what the hospitals need. So as we've been evolving, the hospitals are also evolving because most teaching hospitals don't require a CNA licensure. So there's lots of ways that the programs continue to evolve to meet the need of the workforce, and we're really glad to be doing that work with you all.
Lovely. And then I was going to take a vote. So I hope folks who aren't on camera are ready to participate in a little bit of voting around what we do next, because we have a relatively small group here. And so we could continue, and we could use this next amount of time for you all to engage in the conversation, whether that's sharing some of your experience or asking some more questions. Or we could divide in breakout rooms where there's going to just be a little bit more of a close-knit community, be able to do those same things. And ultimately, in this space, in the breakout rooms, I encourage folks to talk about what's useful to them. This is your time. You committed to be here, and it's an opportunity to connect with peers. So even if it feels slightly off topic, that's okay, because this is for y'all, is ultimately how I feel about it. So I want you to bring what you have to the conversation. So in terms of voting, if we could go to the reaction section, and if you would like to stay in the main room, let's give a little heart. And if you want to go in the breakout, let's give a little celebration. All right. You better vote now. All right. I mean, even if the rest of y'all don't vote, the main group is won. So this is fantastic. I love it. Thank you all so much for being flexible in participating and thinking about how we might use this space. But what that does mean for all my hearts is you bring in some questions to this conversation. So please either raise your hand or take yourself off mute and hear what you might be able to ask some questions of the amazing folks that we have on the line today. Eve.
Yes, hello, how are you doing? Thank you. So I've been here about 8 months at Boston Medical Center as the career navigator. I initially came from working with the state in mass rehab, where I was helping individuals get jobs, training, all that good stuff. So I'm running into some hurdles and some barriers, and one of them is the individuals that I'm targeting that need the most of the help in the kitchen. It's similar to like Florette was saying, their schedules are very inconsistent. They're not set schedules. 1 week you're working these days, next week you're working, 2 evening shifts and 2 day shifts. So trying to get training for them, for me, has kind of been the barrier I'm running into. And then the other issue is the supervisors that run the kitchen, they're contractors. They're not BMC employees. So it's difficult for me to approach them and say, hey, like, let's help BMC out together, when for them it's like, well, I don't work for BMC, so this doesn't really pertain to me. Is kind of the response I get, kind of is, you know, like, well, yeah, that's great for them, but that doesn't affect that. It's not going to help me at all, right? So I'm kind of trying to think of how to get around that, because I don't want to go to the, you know, the head person and be like, hey, this guy's not, you know, being flexible to, if I can help the employees, because I don't want to tarnish that relationship. But then also the employees are coming to me and they're being like, yeah, like, I can't do anything, my hands are tied, I'm stuck here. So I don't know if anybody has a answer. It's just something I'm running into, and I'm trying to navigate it, but I guess that's my job as the career navigator. So
I don't have a great solution, but you know, during COVID, we explored a lot of different educational and training opportunities, and some of the opportunities that we've found, and one that we are starting to implement right now is some asynchronous trainings. So I don't know how digitally literate these employees are, how many asynchronous options are, but that has been able to open up opportunities for employees who don't have a set schedule, or maybe they work overnights and they can't take classes that a traditional day shift or even an evening shift employee could do. One of the partnerships that we just launched is with UMass Global. So University of Massachusetts has all its physical entities, and Global is their online college. And we're starting some medical assistant, patient care assistant, and practice assistant, so entry-level admin trainings with them. And those are almost entirely online. There are some different labs that they have to do in person, but they're all asynchronous. So you can log on at a time that works for you to do a training that works for you. Another thing I'll just mention is some of these schedule barriers or quality of life issues. To Davy's point, when they work with different employers, Mass General Brigham recruits trainees through one of their pharmacy tech trainings. And so there's a cohort of pharm techs, and then they all go out to their different placements. We found out through that, due to the transparency of JVS, that we're not the most competitive wage out there. We're kind of middle to the bottom. And that's been a good conversation to have with leadership in that department of, did you know why maybe we're not getting the top tier candidates? Because the top tier candidates can be a little pickier and choosier about where they go. So I wonder if there's a way that you can talk to anybody about this is why problems are happening, or this is why employees are leaving or are not satisfied. We need to think about ways that we can get them to stay. And I know I'm a workforce development specialist. People don't always want to hear that from me, but starting those conversations with open ears might help make change in the long term.
If I may add to this conversation, so we do some work in the human service industry, and you can imagine they also have all this kind of irregular schedule. So to get staff to do training was challenging. So some of them, this is what they did. So they will count training hours as part of working hours. And they will require all supervisors that if a staff sign up for training, you have to release them. All right, so they made it a policy across board. So in your case, BMC able to communicate to vendors that if a staff sign up for training is deemed as working hours and you have to release them to participate, will go a long way in breaking the jam here for you.
And I'll offer, I'm a little bit more contentious. I know I can appreciate you trying to negotiate this relationship and build on this longstanding relationship, particularly as someone who's newer to the organization. But I'm a fan of just collecting receipts, right? Like if you know, so some of that's data, right? Like if you are engaged with the workers and they're saying, well, I would attend this, but I can't because of these reasons. And that's 10 people who say that, right? If you're getting some input from those folks to say what would make it more possible for them to, like, gauging their interest, what makes it more possible, what's a barrier to it. And then ultimately a contractor still has a contract, am I right? Like the benefit to you is keeping your job as a contractor. And so, you know, obviously there's a more delicate way to say that, but ultimately, if the person that you're working with is not collaborating with you in a way that is effectively reaching the needs, then maybe we need to examine that partnership. And again, I know there's a lot of things that go into it. Sometimes there's big P politics, small P politics, relationships of people who've worked with 20 years. I'm not trying to say that any of that is easy to navigate, but I think that at least you can build some case around that, right? And you might be able to engage with some of your colleagues. And if you were saying, if you look at the numbers of comparable training positions that are happening at Mass General Brigham and at Boston Children's, but Leahy, that they have, how many more people are able to participate because they have on-site space and release time to be able to participate in these trainings, right? So like there is sometimes the co-opetition can be leveraged in your favor when you're like, listen, they figured it out. It's not to say that these things are easy, but some of our folks and our neighbors have figured out a way to get people the training that they need to be able to gain the skills that they need and be successful. It's something about our process is missing its full potential.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree. I mean, trust me, I don't mind having to be the bad guy if I need to be. That was my role at Mass Rehab. It's just more of, you know, that's not the first route I want to take. I kind of want to like build relationships and bridges, but sometimes, you know, like you said, you got to burn that bridge to rebuild another one. So I appreciate the support from everybody. I'll keep you posted.
Appreciate it. All right, anybody else? Who else? Because if you're all shy, I will be aggressive and follow people to share something. All right. I'll also feel the silence because I don't have a lot of tolerance for it and I want this to be valuable. But so this is an additional question, and I really open it up to the entire Zoom room if you have experience with this. But one of the challenges that I hear from both employers and partner organizations is around data. Sometimes that's related to grant support, like you need to be able to show outcomes in grant reports and funding that you received. Sometimes that's your own internal collection of data to do evaluation to see what's working and what might need to be adjusted. But I'm curious if any of you have had some conversations, strategies, or lessons around how do you define who's collecting what data and what agreements there are to share that data between partners. I know there are experts here. I didn't just throw in a question. Lorette, you got something?
Nope, Kathy came off mute.
Oh, all right.
So thank you, Melissa. This has been a great conversation. And there's actually 3 of us on the call today from the University of Rochester. And we just recently launched a program that is UR Career Pathways that has a lot of the same flavor of everything you're talking about here today, except we don't have the community partnerships, the extent of community partnerships that you've been talking about. And so the specific question you're asking about data, I think that, I would let, Jamil or Karen respond more because they've been with the program much longer than I have. In relation to program outcomes, I think we're doing okay with that. What our concern is, as we're getting bigger and having more employees involved in the program, it's really keeping track of where they are in the program, what kind of credits they need to have, because focusing mainly on the LPNs and RNs, really keeping track of what courses they're in, how their academic program is going, how to really maintain that connection to ensure that we are budgeting correctly to be able to provide that financial support for them throughout their program.
Can you tell us more about what it is that you all are doing?
So Jamil, I don't know if Jamil, if you want to jump in, Jamila is the program manager.
Yeah, sure. Actually, much of our work sounds very similar to what you all are doing at Mass General and also at the Children's Hospital in terms of really establishing a program that identifies what we've determined to be high demand positions within the organization, meaning these roles are critical to the work that we are doing within the medical center and across the university. Just thinking creatively what we can do to support individuals either from outside of the organization, bringing them in and highlighting these opportunities. Many of them requiring high school diploma, and at the very most, an associate's degree, supporting individuals with getting there. And so our approach is kind of the same as what you guys talked about, outside in, inside up. So we're also supporting our incumbent staff with preparing to get into this list of high demand positions that we've identified. There are 17 of those positions within the health system. We started off with a workforce needs assessment throughout the region where we're at. We're upstate New York. And so we did a regional workforce needs assessment. And those workforce needs that we identified in the region aligned with what we also have within the University of Rochester. And so, when this work started pre-pandemic, we had to identify 8 high demand positions. Our list has grown to 17. And so we're supporting our incumbent staff with whatever resources that are needed to get prepared for these high demand positions. Again, some of them are positions that individuals can be trained on the job for, such as positions we're calling an ambulatory tech, which is kind of like a medical assistant, all the way up to 2-year degree programs where, people can become a sleep technologist or a respiratory therapist, right? So we have a really comprehensive list of high demand positions that we're supporting people with getting into. This support comes at the highest level of the organization. This is new. And so we've been developing for quite some time, but just officially launched at the end of last year. So really, we're working some kinks out. Some of our training programs are a bit more mature than others. We've really been able to establish a solid partnership with one of our community colleges to really work with our workforce to prepare them to become LPNs and RNs. As we are a new program, that is where a significant interest from our workforce is coming from. And that is also kind of where many of our partnerships are moving along further than some of the other 17 positions we've identified. But Kathy, I just want to, now that we've kind of highlighted, kind of bring back into your point of some of the challenges we're facing there.
And I will just share too that the University of Rochester is the largest employer in Rochester. And so, that we, have a huge bandwidth to support. But the individuals that are the employees, our incumbent staff that are interested in tuition-based programs like the rad tech, respiratory tech, surgical tech, LPN, RN, really developing a system which we're in the process of trying to figure out, of tracking them, of where they are in their program, what prereqs they have taken, and what, when did they actually start in the actual degree program, and how many credits are they going to be taking, so that we can budget appropriately for providing their full tuition support. And didn't know whether you have a system in place. I think Karen is connecting with someone on the chat for us to have a follow-up conversation with later. But if you've developed a system that helps with tracking for budgeting purposes.
So what I was going to mention, but I wanted to give you the opportunity, Kathy, I didn't want to, talk too much, is that Boston Children's, we started using Apricot, which is Social Solutions. I know that I believe JVS also uses it, and others on the call also uses that system. There's different levels of it. And we implemented it in 2020 during the height of the pandemic. And prior to that, we were using a homegrown SharePoint system to track everything there. And so, in the past 3 years since implementing it, we've seen a huge shift. There's definitely still work that we're doing to ensure that we're getting the data into the database, right? Because it's only as good as the data that's in there.
Right.
So one of the things that we've improved in the last few months is that we now get I think it's quarterly, a quarterly upload from our other systems, so PeopleSoft and things like that. So, and then we also have an upload from our system that yes, thank you, Social Solutions to Bonterra. Thank you so much, Kathleen. So the other thing that we do is the new hire modules. We use a system called Net Learning here at Boston Children's. And if employees want to further their learning and development through other avenues, they're using that system to enroll in things like aspiring leaders and
Yes.
upstander, bystander, a lot of other things that we have here. All of this is now in our Apricot system.
And
we're
you're saying
also-
Apricot,
I'm sorry, it's
APRIC?
Social Solutions.
Oh,
the
Social Solutions,
Social
okay.
Solutions, which is now Bonterra, Bonterra. And so with all of that information being in there, and now, although the systems don't talk to each other, unfortunately, but because we have the uploads coming through our PeopleSoft, this also gives us an opportunity to track the growth of the employee.
Okay.
So if it's someone that, maybe they were doing computer classes and English classes, and then they did their Aspiring Leaders course, did that transition them into a new role in 2 to 3 years, or right? So we're literally using that data to see, is it working? Like, are the other classes working? So although what you're describing is a little bit different than what we're presenting, I think it could be tracked in
Okay,
there.
that gives us some ideas to check into something.
Yeah, because what I do with our youth and young adult program, I track the budget through this system
Okay.
because we have various wages depending on what year the college students are in. So I track where they are in the process with the
Okay.
fringes, and there is a calculator within there. So I think
Okay.
budget could be done in there as well, while you're also tracking what are the classes. Of course, you do have to register people in, or you can upload them. But
Okay.
yes, I think it could definitely be done in there.
Thank you very much. It gives us an idea of a system. We weren't really aware of what was out there for such a program. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you so
thank you,
much.
Kathleen, for reminding me about the name in the chat there too.
And then Stephanie, I have a tendency to like know half of things, and I don't know, but y'all have a workforce development dashboard. Is that true, or am I making that up, or am I confusing you with somebody else?
Are you talking about us here at Boston Children's?
No, at Mass.
Kathy? Okay.
We have a workforce development dashboard, but so we use a system, an integrated system called ETO, Efforts to Outcomes. Would not recommend. Basically, it's where data goes to die. But what it does do is, I'm sorry, this is terrible. But
No.
what we use that dashboard for is really tracking participation. So it doesn't do a good system of saying person A took this program and then did that program and now has a new job. But we can pull a dashboard and say how many people have taken our introduction to medical terminology in the last 15 years, or how many people are currently enrolled in a workforce development training program.
And we have started to explore the possibility of joining efforts with the School of Nursing, which is part of the University of Rochester, to possibly collaborate with the use of Slate, so that we could enter employees as students like you would in Slate, so we could track them as students. But that doesn't serve us in relation to the budgeting aspect.
I will also give a plug that this type of question is perfect for Mobilize, right? So that's our online community practice. I do have a slide that we didn't, that I won't put up now, but it will be in the follow-up material. So you all will get a recording of this, and then you will get the slide deck. And in there, it talks about it. And it's really an online platform for healthcare employers to come together for exactly this type of reason, right? Whether it's like, hey, does anybody have a sample MOU that they'd be interested in sharing? Or, hey, what type of software or platforms? Because I know that there are other people who just built their own over years because they weren't able to do it. And so I'm sure that there's some wonky Excel sheets that are out there, and being able to engage in folks. And so, we are building that community. It's not always at this point yet as engaged or responsive as we would like it to be, but that's where you guys come in and start posting exactly questions like this. And so it can go directly yourself, or if you're unsure and need a little support, you can always send them directly to me or to my colleague Claudio, and we can post on your behalf. Or if you need a little bit more technical support. We did have a recent 101 webinar on kind of how to get engaged in that platform, but if you missed it, we have a recording, and or Claudio is available for a little one-on-one tutorial, time permitted. Candace.
Hi, so I'm driving, so I apologize for not coming off camera, but it is so good to see you, Melissa, and just gosh, the conversation has just been awesome. And so want to thank my colleagues for everything that they're sharing. I feel like I've learned 5 new things and I'm so excited to go back and write them down, what have you. So here's my question. It might be a little granular, but as we do these programs and we see the successful transition of participants move from intern to then full-time employee, I'm really curious to hear what are the strategies or things that you have in place to ensure success of these individuals who are now full-time employees. If they've come off these internships and they've been great. Are there any things that are in place to ensure their success, once they do come onto full-time payroll? And for how long do you perhaps follow them? And I ask that both of the community-based organizations, but also of the employers as well.
Emmanuel here. I can speak from the community organization perspective. So we have immigrant professional fellowship, where we will pair a new hire to a professional or someone who's much more advanced in their career for 1 year, to allow them to really ask questions and figure out, how do I build my career now that I have a job? So such a program has been quite effective. And for our fellows in the fellowship, once we recruit them, we put them in a WhatsApp group. Even when they graduate, we maintain the group. And I can tell you, even as at now, they are communicating with each other, supporting each other, right? To keep them going. It's very effective. It doesn't cost you that much money, but you can do that. So my advice will be, if you bring a group of people together in your organization, find a way to keep them together as a group, so that there's a way they can keep interacting with each other. We thrive on community. Once you create that for them, they will stick around for a little bit longer. Yeah, thank you.
Maybe the JBS coaches for the pipeline programs have some sort of system of continuing to reach out to the trainees, right? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, Candace. It's good to see you. I'm glad you asked that question. So something that we do that we think is part of what works is just providing real clear expectations to candidates from the beginning of what we're able to help them with, and that any question or any concern should just come to us, even if they feel like we can't help them solve it. So what we do in our programs is, when they're in the recruitment stage and we're working with them, we're trying to mitigate any issues or risks that we see that are coming up. While they're in training, we're working with them, and we have 2 new things actually that I've launched at JVS that I can share will affect any programming that we all do together. So that's for BCH, for MGB, for Dana-Farber, for BMC. One is we created a flex fund program that actually is a pool of money that we can now use to support job seekers who might not be able to make their rent that month, but they'll start their job the following month. They just need help right now. or they don't have enough money to get a T-pass to be able to get to the training program, but they will when they start their job. They just don't have it right now. So it's this pool of money that we're able to tap into now to support job seekers. And there's also a barrier removal team here. So if you don't have childcare, but if you had childcare, you could get into the program. We can now connect you to colleagues who are able to get you the resources that you need, so you can get into the program, retain in the program, successfully complete it, and actually start the job. So those are some of the things that we as coaches used to do, try to scramble around and say, who got a connection to a childcare center with an open space? And now we actually have a dedicated team at JVS that's able to do that. And as someone who's a former coach, I'm like, why didn't we do this 8 years ago when I was in refugee services trying to find everybody childcare? It's hard. And Massachusetts is the most expensive childcare in the country. So it's really, really tough. So we support them while they're in training, and then we support them when they get to the jobs too. Like, we're not trying to dump them off and say, hey, good luck over there. You know, it's really to our benefit, to the client's benefit, to our employer's benefit, to continue to provide them support while they're on the job. So we have a ton of job seekers that come to us, or, you know, trainees who graduated and said, I don't know how to talk to my employer about the fact that they keep scheduling me for back-to-back weekends. And I thought it was supposed to be every other weekend at least. Or, you know, they'll say, I just don't feel like I'm being respected by the nurses on my floor, and I don't know how to speak up about it. They always have me do X, Y, Z. And so this is where usually if you don't have somebody to talk to, you don't know what to do. What happens? You probably are going to quit. You're going to quit that job, and no one's going to ever know what happened. And they're going to think, oh, she just quit. She's out. But now they have a way to say, hey, JVS, you've been with me through training. You've helped me through some hard stuff, and you said I could talk to you. What do I do about this? Or I'm really frustrated about this thing. I want to quit. And we're like, okay, everybody calm down. Before you quit, let's talk about it. And usually it just needs a little bit of perspective, right? Like, hey, you said that you want to work every other weekend. When did you let them know that? Well, I didn't write it down, but I told my charge. Okay. What's the process? Well, they say you have to write it down. All right. Do you know how to write it down? Let me help you learn how to write it down. Let's do it together. Or here's how I might have that conversation. What might you do? So there's a lot of support that we provide to them throughout the whole process, even when they've started the job, because then you don't have employers calling us like, oh my God, they just quit, or, oh my God, they just said the most disrespectful thing. It's like, hey, they came to me and shared that this is what's going on. Have you guys heard? And we're like, yep, we just coached them on how to ask you in a professional and polite way. So those are some of the things that our job coaches are doing here. So we like to think of ourselves like a duck, like the top of the duck is all calm and cool, and then the legs and the bottom are like this. That's us. So that's how we do some of that.
Thank you for sharing that. And I just want to reflect on a couple of things that I heard there, like building cohorts and a sense of community, incredibly important. And that can happen sometimes organically, right? Like at the National Fund, there's definitely some contingent of people that were hired around like within the same month or so. And then they're just kind of buddies from here and out. We also have the potential for like a structured buddy system. If somebody is coming on, they get the opportunity to connect with a staff who's been here longer and can kind of be their go-to as they're navigating that new position. And so I think that can happen both informal and formal ways of mentorship and peer connection. I think, you know, Davey's point there around being able to go back to the community partner, I think is just a reflection of the power dynamic with employers and the reality that folks are sometimes scared to talk about their problems because employers haven't always historically been really responsive of supportive of that. And so the community-based organizations have such a different dynamic and level of trust that they are able to build and might be able to get more candid or clarity on what some of the challenges might be. And then provide the support in that way. And then I think the other piece here for me that comes up is just structured onboarding. And while I am certain that the intern had an onboarding process, like what now is different that they're a full-time employee? Are they getting connected to what benefits are available to them? Are they getting connected around how things might be different now that you're a full-time employee? How might your role change there? leadership and support and supervision and evaluation. And so, you know, if there isn't a specific onboarding kind of protocol or process for folks who have been engaged in the organization in some other way, and then are now coming on to be a full-time employee, I encourage just to like do a little crosswalk of the general onboarding and seeing where there might be stuff that's missing, if they're, or redundant, right, for them, that might be able to streamline some of that for them, and then also help them connect to kind of that transition of what's different as an intern to a full-time employee. Love to see this in the chat. And we are at time. I have a feeling we could just do this conversation all afternoon, but we cannot. So what I am going to encourage you all to do is to kind of keep your eye on your inbox for our next session. We're still working out a few details, both on our presenters and timing. So we don't have registration to share with y'all today, but it is going to be coming soon. And the other seed I want to plant for folks on this call is that at the end of this webinar series, we are working to have an in-person meeting for a select number of employers in mid to late July. Still working out the details on that too, but I want to plant that seed for you if you're thinking about where you might be taking vacation or what may be going on. We do know that the meeting's going to be based in DC. And more information is coming soon. So just please keep that in your back pocket. And then lastly, please just join me in thanking our presenters today. I really appreciate their openness and willing to share, and our audience members for connecting and coming out and asking some great questions. I really appreciate this time together. So thank you all for being a part of it. And then stay tuned for additional information in the recording from this webinar.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Melissa.
Thank you so much. Have a great afternoon.